Hi and welcome to the Gemhogs YouTube channel. I hope you're having a beautiful day today. For the free wire tutorial today, we're going to make a rosary chain with a difference. So this is my take on a rosary link chain, but there's no beads. So let's head down to the board, take a closer look, and then let's give your fingertips a workout. So here is our beadless rosary link chain. Very strong links, completely free of heat or soldering. And all we've got to do is give our fingertips a bit of a workout. So I've started the chain, and what I've decided to do is use one link in antique bronze and one link in copper. We're just using a single gauge of wire today, which is that 1mm or 18 gauge wire. And what I like to do is get a little bit of a setup going. So we'll be working with 5-inch lengths of 1mm or 18 gauge wire. And I just need to grab my ruler. So in addition to correctly measuring those 5-inch lengths of that 1mm or 18 gauge wire, we're also going to be using the ruler to create spaces along these pieces of wire so that we know we're going to be creating repeatable segments for our chain. So I'm going to start off with this little piece of copper colour wire. Again, it's 5 inches in length. Now what I'm going to do is measure 2 inches from one end and grip at that point. So I've got 2 inches of wire on one side, 3 inches going through and out the other way. And what I'm going to do is bring one of those sides up and push the other one down. So what we end up with is a bit of a wonky TIE fighter looking thing. So there's 2 inches of wire here. And then I'm using my flat pliers, which are the same distance across at the box joint as they are at the tip. If you only have tapered flat pliers, that's fine. Just pop a little mark with marker pen onto them so that you can repeat that distance, and I would say quite a wide distance between those two angle changes, so whichever pliers you have available. But this little section in the middle, in terms of inches, it's about 1/4 of an inch. It's probably about 5 or 6 millimeters in metric. So what I would do is go through my stash of wires and create lots of these funny little Z shapes before moving on to using my round nose pliers. You will need your ruler again later. So you could use round nose pliers with a mark on them. Let me just grab them, so that you get repeatable sizes of loops, or you could use a step on your bail makers. I'm going to use step number 2 on my multi-step beadle on bail makers, and I'm going to show you where we're going next. So I'm going to create a loop on either side. So I might as well start with the longer piece while I'm here. Pop that step number 2 into position, rotate that wire around until I get a loop on one end, centralised at the end of that central section. Now that's a little bit off to one side, so if that happens to you, you can pop the pin back in, just rotate that around until you get that centralised on that central core wire. So normally if we were making a standard rosary chain link, we'd have a bead in the centre there and allow space for wrapping either side. We're doing something completely different today. So with the shorter pin, we're going to do the exact same thing, but what I want to draw your attention to is the side of your core which the tail comes away from the loop. So if I just dance that in the light, you can see that as we're looking at it right now, the tail of wire is coming over the top of the design. So if I pop my pliers back into position, and again I'm going to use that number 2 on my multi-step bail makers, what I will do now is bring that loop of wire underneath. So we have one underneath and one over the top. So let me show you that again in the light. You can see that the tail of wire up at the top now goes underneath, and the lower one on your screen goes over the top. Doesn't really matter which one goes which way, as long as you've got one going each way. And you take a second to centralise that segment. So that's still not quite right, so I'll just rotate that plier around, pull the tail away until I get that to sit straight. Now each 5-inch length of wire generates only about 1/2 inch of chain. So you can see it's quite a wire hungry chain, but it is lovely and sturdy and moves beautifully on the body as well. Each link measuring approximately 1/2 inch. So if you wanted a 7-inch chain, you'd need 14 pieces of wire, each cut to 5 inches. And that's the chain end to end. So obviously if you're going for a 7.5-inch bracelet, you would need to add in mathematically how much space you want to allow for your chosen closure. So my advice would be to get all of those bits of wire sorted, get yourself a little production line. I'm going to go for alternating colours again, with those little loops set around that central segment. So I'm just going to get a little production line going, cut all of those pieces of wire, make that funny little central segment with a 2-inch length of wire out one side and the remainder, a little bit longer, going out the other side. Let's head back down to the board and I'll show you now how to create the chain. I will do one link just by itself and then I'll show you how to connect them together. So I'll show you how to just create the link by itself and then I'll show you how to put them together. This is basically the first maneuver. So the shorter end of wire we're going to wrap simply one time around the core and then we will move on to the next step. So let's grab a bronze one I think to start with. So you can see the difference between the shorter tail and the longer tail. You can give them both a little bit of a warm through just to make sure they're nice and flexible. And we'll start on the shorter side. So I'm going to very carefully grip the loop that we created, not crushing down anywhere the wires cross over. Draw that tail of wire over that first half and then push that so it does one complete turn. We're going to keep that as close to the loop as possible. If it goes a little bit awry, you can tidy it up by just tightening that coil. Let me just show you with the light on it, and then just give that a very delicate little squish so that it sits really smooth. The key with my Beadless Rosary Link Chain is that we're not using a lot of space on this side. It needs to be really, really close to the loop. So take a second just to get that sitting up. And what you can do is go through your whole stock and get to just the loop position. And like I said, I'm going to show you how to completely close this one up. And then I will show you how to add them together. So on the second side, the one with the longer tail of wire, again going to give that a warm through. Let's just turn it over so that the upper side is showing where the wire crosses over the top of that angle change. Again, support that loop, push the wire all the way around. Now we need to ensure that this is a nice tidy coil. So I'm just going to fill that gap in the centre. If it starts to get a little bit baggy when you're halfway along, just give that a quick tighten up. Make sure everything is sitting exactly how you want it to, nice and neat spiralling. You can kind of stop and do that whenever you need to, and then just bring that tail all the way around until we've filled the gap, like so. Give that a squish down, make sure that your two loops are nice and happy. And then just pull those tails away to ensure that they're nice and smooth. Now that is one link ready to go, and you can integrate these single links into your chain later. What we're going to do next is to trim if we need to. What we're looking for is to have exactly 1 inch length of wire remaining coming away from that core. So you can see the shorter side has worked absolutely perfectly. That's dead on the 1 inch. If I flip it over, the longer side needs just the tiniest of trims. So you can use your ruler, and do use your ruler. Normally I'm a big fan of saying just wing it, just eyeball it, but today we want to trim that so that those two little tails of wire coming away are identical to one and another. So again, if you wanted to, if you were alternating colours, you could do all of your bronze ones, for instance, to this stage and leave all of the copper ones with their loops still unwrapped. And in that way, you'll be able to link everything together. So let's just pop that out of the way for now. And I'm going to grab one of my bronze ones to show you how to link these pieces together. So because I'm alternating colours, I need to think about this. If yours is all the same colour, it matters not one bit. So I'm just going to make sure that my tail wires are nice and smooth and warm and ready to go. And I'm going to slide one of those into position. Exactly the same as you would with a traditional rosary link. Just get that to sit down inside the other loop. That's the joy of working with two tones of wire, as you can see exactly what's happening. Just going to close that back up. And then I'm going to grab my first pair of pliers. I'm going to grip across the loop. Now this is repeating exactly what we did with the piece that we made a second ago. But we're just having to be mindful that we're not crushing down on the next link along. So because I went for number 2 on my multi-step bail making pliers, I think it's either a 3 or 4 millimeter gap, and that's plentiful to use a fairly tapered set of pliers just to hold across that link. So this is the shorter piece of wire, so I take it across the back first and then bring that up and over the top, so it's travelled one entire rotation. Now that's quite baggy, and what we said was we needed to keep that really tight and close down to the loop shape. So I'm just going to make sure that that fits exactly where I want it to fit, and in a moment we will trim that down to that 1 inch position. Now, do I have a link that is copper ready to go? Yep, so let's say that I made a couple of these links ready. Here's a copper one that I made earlier. I don't think I trimmed it though, so let's just double check. That's 1 inch. Well, that worked out well. It was ready the shape that I wanted it to be, so happy days. So let's push that down into the other side. And this is what I was talking about. If you were to make all of one colour or make up half of your links, then you can kind of speed the process up a little bit. You can do a little bit of piecework and then move back when you're ready to connect everything together. So the same thing occurs on the other side. We are going to grip across the loop, making sure that we're not putting any pressure on the next link in the chain. Those sticky outy bits are going to get right on my nerves, so please bear with me. Push your wire around until you have filled that core wire with super neat and tidy wrapping. You can obviously do the coiled sections before you link these together, but I wanted to show you this in order. What we're looking to do is to get both of those tails going in opposite directions, making sure that everything is nice and neat and tidy. So that's how you put the links together. So I'm going to move back to this piece now to show you how to do the coiling up, because otherwise it's really tricky to show you with all of this kerfuffle happening in the background. I will do those in just a moment. So this piece has been trimmed to 1 inch on either end. We're going to grab ourselves those round nose pliers and create some nice tight coils. So just one at a time. When you're creating coils, it pays to get almost all of the way round that circular form, but leave a little gap. You see the little gap there? Because what it means is you can push that into your non-dominant finger and you get a more rounded centerpiece to your coil. So at the moment, we're just bringing this back towards the center of our beadless rosary link chain. Push and push until it sits right in the middle. So it's almost in line, or almost exactly in line with the loop on the end. So I'll just do the other side. Bring that up towards me so that the spiral forms away from the body of the link. And then just grip around the end of that round form, pushing that circular form until you get your little spiral. Now ideally these should look as close to each other as possible. If there's minute differences, don't worry. I think the hole is slightly larger on this one than it is on the other side, but this is just a demonstration for you today. I'm not going to let it worry me. So let's have a look at that completed beadless rosary link chain. All that remains is for us to push those spirals down. Now you can see that they're both on one end. It looks like a little bee at the moment, which is kind of cool. They're both on one end, all bar that single wrap of wire. And in order to centralize these spirals, what we're going to do is just gently pull that away towards the nearest end. So you've got an end that's further away. There's 4 maybe wraps of wire in between, and there's only one on this side. So we're just moving that spiral over slightly, before we draw that down over the central body of the link. And that just tiny little manoeuvre will allow your spiral to sit centrally over the core wire of your completed beadless rosary link. So let's flip over to the other side and show you again. So you can see that we're closer to this end. So what we're going to do is just pull the spiral this way slightly, lifting it away ever so gently from the body of that link. And then we're going to rotate that down so that it sits over that central core. You can push it down with your fingers, or you can give it a very gentle help. You may need to take a moment just to get those spirals to sit exactly where you want them to. So there you would have one absolutely completed beadless rosary link chain. So you can go through and create these teeny tiny little 1/2 inch long completed beadless rosary link chain links. Do half of them and then link them together, and in that way, if you want to sit and watch telly, you can do all of those, and then when it comes to the crunch, you put them all together with the half finished ones. So at this stage, before you do any wrapped loops at all, these will now function as the intermingling links. There's probably a better word than that, maybe interconnecting links. You can call it what you want. I'm going to show you how to put that on the end now. So we're here with the final link to add in. Let's slide that wire into position, slot that down into the gap that we created earlier, and we will start off by gripping that circular form, wrapping that around. This is the longer piece of wire, so we're going to take that round a couple of times first. Make sure that's neat and tidy, and then we're going to add in one of our pre-made links, slide that down into position. You can hear that lovely snicked noise as it sits into the correct place. And let's just grab hold of that loop. So you can see it's a lot less fiddly to add 2 completed links together than it is to have loads of little TIE fighters. So because this was the shorter length of wire, it goes around just one time. Make sure that's nice and neat and tidy, and you're happy, and then we'll continue filling in with what was the longer piece of wire. So you'll need to support the loop on that end instead, making sure you're not crushing anything else. We'll take this around one more time, I think, until it fills that gap and your 2 wires are pointing in opposite directions. You can take a second at this stage just to compress those little rotations of wire down until you get one really neat and tidy springy bit in the middle. Now really the most important thing to remember is that we need to trim those wire ends. So if I pop that down onto my ruler, I'm going to trim a little bit off the end there. That's going to go everywhere. There we go. They do fly, those little wires, and then we'll do exactly the same on the other side. And I'll show you the simplest way to create those coils and get them to sit really neatly. So let's just hold that in position and trim away that last little bit. Get the ruler off screen because it's kind of shiny, and then we'll grab in that round plier one last time. So the easiest way to get these little coils to sit neatly, I'm just going to show you one because it's exactly the same but on the second side. So I'll create my coil, trying to keep the positioning of your pliers as similar each time as possible so that you end up with a similar shape in the center, as round as possible. Just push that into your non-dominant hand until that sits over the very center of the core of your beadless rosary link chain. So that's sitting nice and neat and tidy. Now in order for that to sit down over the center of that spiral, what we're going to do is grip the majority of that spiral apart from that last little coil that's attached to the spiral itself below. So if I pull that away, if I show you that upside down, you can see there's a teeny tiny gap now just here as the spiral moves out of alignment, and then you can push the rest of it down. You hold it at a funny angle and then just push it down over that central core. You can use your thumb to get that to sit into position. And in that way, that little extra maneuver will just help you to get that to sit neatly. If you try and push the spiral down flat from the end without doing that little tiny lift, it just doesn't sit quite in position. So let's just pop that down on the board. I really like having that in the 2 tones. I think it looks really smart. And once you've got all of those spirals tidied away, there's really no wire to poke you. It's hidden away in the centre of each of those spirals. It's a really smooth feeling chain to work with. Now, with a traditional rosary link, I would encourage you to have one of the links on one end 90 degrees opposing to the other link. And if you do that, what will happen is you'll see all of these little rosy beautiful spirals all aligned together. However, because I went for different coloured wire, I thought it would be fun to see the two aspects. But I will just show you what it would look like if you made those two loops. Let me just grab one of those initial pieces and show you what I mean. If you make them at 90 degrees opposing, it will look like this. You have to work a little bit harder to get those two wires to be exactly opposite after you've done the single rotation with the short wire and just filled the gap with the long wire. But what you will get, and I will show you this because it's my stunt piece, if I just take this copper one in the middle and twist that piece over, you will see that you would then have the faces of the spirals showing on every link. I actually quite like them to be opposing, but you have the option to do either at 90 degree opposing or on the same plane. I like it on the same plane, but you've got options there. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed creating the Beadless Rosary Link Chain with me. I sometimes wonder why I give my projects such long names, because it takes ever such a lot of oxygen to say them. Have yourself a beautiful day. If you're enjoying the content, please do like and subscribe to the channel because it helps me be seen by the wider community. Have the most beautiful day and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.